So what is the difference between riches and wealth? The difference between riches and wealth, stay till the end to find out. It's kind of similar, something along the lines of like drinking a glass of water, a jug of water, a giant bucket of water, versus going and trying to dig out little streams, or meticulously etching out little streams for water to be able to flow through. So ultimately you get the differentiation between understanding the fundamental difference between having a little bit of money and having a little bit of a stream for money to be able to flow through. And so ultimately what all these podcasts stand for, what all these Ding Tech Change for Game Studios podcasts stand for over the days, over the last 6 months, more or less, have to do with, in essence, not water, not riches, not getting money, because money comes and goes. Money comes and goes. Money sometimes comes in and then it goes out. Ultimately, what this podcast is about is the wealth. It's the wealth. It's the etches of making little but potential for energy to be able to flow through, water to be able to flow through, making little streams, being able to etch out and carve out little streams in your mentality, in your brain, in making mental assets, basically, like a network. Like a network is a mental asset, for example, but in addition, there are things that are similar to mental assets that correspond to this podcast, more or less. Like every single podcast episode is like a little bit of a direction for water to be able to travel, and ultimately it's possible to be able to get aligned with that, because you can ultimately just feel the direction of energy being able to travel by understanding these different podcasts and seeing the different neural networks that are sort of connecting by the different just mentalities that are being mentioned in every single day, meaning that water can flow in that direction after all, as opposed to just getting a little bit of water, as opposed to just someone just handing you a cup of water. It's like, hey, yeah, just drink this water, just be satisfied with this water after all. You can just sort of like vibe in and jive in and just connect with and chime in with the essences and the senses of how money flows, of the essences of how money thinks, of how money operates, of before and after you get money, where it's been and where it's going. That same money that you just touched, basically it was touching somebody else before, and how it got to you and what somebody else was thinking and feeling when they gave it to you, in essence, and how you can correspond to future money and past money and the essence of money before it existed, and the essence of money of where it's going until the end of time, basically, which is kind of a joke, but because that's a long time to think about. But after all, if you're just able to connect with money in a more fundamental sense, that's what this podcast has been all about, after all. It's the root networks, the pipelines, the potential for energy to be able to flow through that is money energy, monetary energy, and that all has to do with human beings. Those are neural networks that are inside of humans, after all. And those are like the ditches, in essence, the place, the aggregate ability for water to be able to flow through, having tunnels and pipelines and processes for water to be able to potentially flow through. That's the ditches that we're all digging on a day-to-day basis to be able to have new energy for the brain, to be able to have neural networks, to be able to try to just exemplify and edify the mind, the brain, the mental, the riches brain, the money brain, to be able to focus on how, in essence, there's potential for money to be able to flow, money, water energy, money to be able to flow, because in essence there's a corresponding correlation to what people do when they have money, when they're holding money, when they're holding a cup of water, basically, when they're holding a cup of money water, basically, they feel obligated to drink it. They feel like the only thing that they could possibly do is just drink it, even if it's a bucket of water, even if it's a gallon or a couple jugs of water, after all. They feel like there's an obligation to just drink that water every single time, as opposed to leveraging the science of that water, looking at that water under a telescope, under a microscope, understanding the source of where in the earth that water came from, basically, and understanding the potential of how that they could water a garden, for example, like within their house, and they can develop little root networks around their whole house, so that in essence they can pour that water at the top of this, like top of a hill in their house, and then in essence they can grow a bunch of little seeds all around their house, for example, and like grow food, for example, with that water, as opposed to having to go to the grocery store and doing all these other errands, for example. It's just knowing the neural networks, the neural root networks, which correspond to the metaphysical connection of these podcasts to the essences of little water flowing potential spigots and potential energy, for potential water flow to be able to flow in. And that's the purpose of these whole podcasts, after all, is to develop different routes and different potential route routines for water to be able to flow through on a day-to-day basis, basically. And then try to connect continually and conceptually the way that everybody as an individual is able to collaborate with that same information and that same neural network, that same root network process, to be able to continue to dig their own roots, dig their own root networks for water to be able to flow through inside their own brain. It's like digging inside of the actual brain, inside of the mentality of the brain, to be able to continue to try to unfold new potential route networks, route networks, through root networks, through developing methodologies of asset mindsets, which are different for every single person in the world. And so if everybody's able to collaborate on this same mindset methodology, then everybody can make philanthropy, because philanthropy is at the back end of solving problems, which is at the back end of all businesses is solving problems after all. So that corresponds to developing philanthropy in the world, and that also corresponds to everybody collaborating in the world to make the global philanthropy energy grid. The global philanthropy energy grid after all. But fundamentally understanding that riches are like the water of a stream that flows down the stream in essence, but the thing that guides the stream in essence is the neural networks. It's the root networks where the water has the ability to flow basically, and somebody sometimes has the ability to etch out and make out and carve out little essences of water to be able to flow, because water is microscopic. Even if you make little small areas for little water to flow in different directions in a little minute sense, then you can grow a little garden all around your house and have little ways that the energy from the hydro energy can power your house in essence by having little systems and pumps more or less that make it go up and down, and then that can generate and produce electricity. And that same water, I could be drank just like a normal cup of water in essence, can lead to many alternative potential processes to be able to connect with those processes and fundamentally align with the potential of learning more about the science and the nature of the science and the networks that surround every other activity that correlates and corresponds to the water in of itself, as opposed to just drinking it after all, because the water was flowing by. It was flowing by when you first noticed it in the stream, and if you just get the idea of how and what else to do with it other than just to drink it, which is sort of like where it goes and then it disappears after it's drunk, after it's been drinking. So after all, if there's this whole science methodology and mindset which corresponds down to the molecule level of what H2O is, of what water is, of what the H2O like element and how it perfectly likes to be treated, so that it can correspond to being able to like fundamentally grow plants and fundamentally be used to be able to hydrate all elements of life in different fashions, but down to a cellular level, how it can be recreated and found at its source, to be able to try to connect in a scientific level your own methodology, everybody's own methodology, to be able to figure out, just like these podcasts every single day, inspirations for new root networks. So we ultimately want to inspire new root networks, and for different people to be able to collaborate in a collaborative way, to be able to make different neural networks for water to be able to conceptually flow. Because in essence, that's the difference between riches and wealth, is the essence of the stream and carving out new streams and carving out the potential energy for different energy, monetary energy, to be able to flow from person to person, one person to another, one like organization to another after all, and then one foundational connection of one synapse and one other idea to another, so that those things can eventually leak together inside your brain as well, inside of a mentality, inside of a depiction, inside of a visualization sense to begin with. And once those things can merge together in a visualization sense, and the energy flow has the potential to connect other synapses and mindset depictions and projections in the brain, then all those things can flow together to be able to develop and project into one larger picture, into one conceptual larger business, for example. And then conceivably you're focused on the neural networks like that are ultimately able there to be able to serve other people, just like these podcasts are trying to serve other people in essence, as opposed to just focusing on the water that's supposed to go through it. That's like focusing on the gas of a car as opposed to a car in essence. So we just are trying to continue to focus on the root networks to be able to get more water to more places and more people in the world in essence. And we need everybody to be able to continue to dig out different root networks, to be able to continue to bring new water to new people and new mindsets every single day, because the more water that gets to more people, the more nourished that more people get, the more that they also get the understanding of being able to build out and develop and guide their own root networks and etch out and dig out and carve out their own root networks, so that all this water has the ability to go from one person to another, and it's sprung and springs out from the earth, and it's plentiful and has the ability to cause abundance, to be able to connect all people in the world, and all elements of the world are able to connect through this water and through these neural networks and through these pipelines of conceptual connecting water networks to connect all people. And that therefore will reflect on philanthropy, and that will reflect on philanthropy energy, and then therefore the global philanthropy energy grid. Because there is abundance to be able to go around, to be able to get these resources to every single human in the world. And so ultimately, once we are able to realize this potential, we'll try to develop the most philanthropy that we possibly can conceptualize by bleeding and leaking and carving out these root networks for water to be able to contextually and conceptually exist in all communities, in all elements, in all facets of humanity, so that ultimately everybody is satiated. Every single human is satiated at all given times of the day. And that is the difference between riches and wealth. Fundamentally, that's the difference between riches and wealth. Riches and wealth. So let's all become wealthy. Yes. Yeah. And so ultimately, yeah, we want to continue down this route. we can continue to cover the world in different frequencies. We can continue to cover the world in different frequencies and play jump rope with different frequencies, basically, so that everybody in the world is playing jump rope with asset frequencies in essence, and we're able to blanket the world with these asset frequencies by developing and carving out these root neural networks for the world to be able to benefit from, and we're making one global brain, because we all can feel that. We can all feel that when water gets to our doorstep, when water comes through, to be able to satiate the mentalities of all of us. Yeah. So that's how we can generally save the world, by focusing on the wealth as opposed to the riches. The wealth as opposed to the riches, by bringing it to all people and the networks, and the actual networks, the people networks, the humanity networks, the root networks of nature, connecting through all humans to be able to connect all humans through networking and neural networks and root networks, and blanket frequencies to blanket the whole world in the form of the global philanthropy energy grid. The global philanthropy energy grid, yeah. That's all for now. Thanks again, Ding Tech by Peace by Ding Tech Change for Games. Ding Tech Change for Games Studios. Thanks again, peace by peace.